All right, so we are live here with my good friend Kyle Handy. How's it going, buddy?
Going good, AJ.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. This is the top rev share earner interview series, and just glad to have you on, man. Excited to hear more of your story and dive into some tactical stuff of how you became one of the top rev share earners in our company and how it's going so well for you. I know you and I met, about 2.5 years ago, I think it was now.
Yeah, yeah, that they're in Puerto Vallarta.
So I don't know if you remember, but we actually met at eXp Con in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, true, true. And then yes, Puerto Vallarta was just the better memory of mine when we were hanging out at the beach.
That's where we got to know each other. That's where
That's
we got to
right.
know each other for
That's
sure.
right.
Well, cool, man. So let's go ahead and get started. What I'd like to do is just kind of start with briefly why you got into real estate. Like, what was the motivation behind it? And then we'll go into why you ended up joining eXp.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a little bit about my background is I've been in real estate since 2008, straight out of college. I was, here in San Antonio, went to a university here and got my degree in finance. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, as far as after college, if I was going to go into banking or investments, kind of fell into real estate. And my mom had been a real estate agent for about 15 years. And so she knew somebody at a new home brokerage or new home business, did that, got interviewed, and just kind of fell into it. I was there for about 5 years. Really loved the business, loved helping people. But I kind of got as high as I could possibly get on the new home sales side of things. It was a very good income. But at the same point, it wasn't my business. It wasn't like, I didn't have the freedom that I desired. And so then in 2013, I got into general real estate and I started up my own brokerage. Fortunately, I had already had my real estate license even while I was in new home sales, even though I didn't need it. But that way I had the 4 years that was required to get, your brokerage here in Texas. And so 2013, I just jumped into general real estate. I just jumped right into having my own, brokerage. I went out and got an LLC and all that good stuff. And basically, even though I had my own brokerage to start with, it mainly just supported me so that way I could sell. And then eventually, though, over the course of about 4 years, from 2013 to 2017, I'd grown that brokerage to about 15 agents and was still, actively selling myself. And it's funny. I always kind of tell the story as far as getting into EXP. I'll kind of share that a little bit later, how that ended up coming to be. But over those 4 years, I learned a lot of stuff. I learned how to build a business. I learned how to sell real estate. I learned how to be a leader and kind of, manage people and kind of make business decisions and accounting. And I mean, just everything you could imagine. And so, realistically, the timing for me to move to EXP couldn't have been better. I mean, I think at that point I had learned a lot of things that would then soon help me here at EXP. So now I've been at EXP since about June of 17. So almost about 3 years, and it's been an amazing ride. I absolutely love it here.
That's awesome, man. So from a new home sales to starting your own independent brokerage to eXp. So like what would you say was the number one reason you joined eXp?
Man, all right. So now I got to get into the story. So I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory. So back in like 2016, there's this guy. He's my sponsor now. His name's Pat Hayes. Maybe I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the name. And he's out here in San Antonio, Texas, with me. Well, he'd been like blowing up my phone, like for probably the better part of a year. Hey, why don't you come, talk to me about this EXP, thing. And I was just like, no, man, I'm not interested. I don't even want to sit down for a meeting. Like completely just blowing him off, for all about a year. And then finally in April of 17, I'm sitting down with my CPA and he's like, hey Kyle, we were just done filing my tax. He's like, hey Kyle, do you know this guy named Pat Hayes? I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, he's been blowing me up for like a year now. He's like, well, I just did his taxes and he's doing some really interesting stuff with, like residual income and building a business at this brokerage called eXp Realty. And so sure enough, when your CPA, he kind of tells you, hey, you need to look at an opportunity, you take it a little bit more seriously. He sees my finances, he sees Pat's finances. And so finally, after that meeting with my CPA, I called Pat up and I said, hey man, I'll give you 30 minutes. Probably still not going to be, interested. I'm very happy with my brokerage. It's my own thing. I built it for 4 years, like blood, sweat, and tears. And but then I sat down with him for 30 minutes, turned into like 3 hours. And I just asked question after question. And realistically, I saw a lot of what he had already done. He had been here at eXp at about, for about 2 years at that point, and built a revenue share group of about, I think 200, a little over 225, 230 agents at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, he was just a real estate agent. He wasn't even a broker owner or anything, had no recruiting background prior to eXp. And in 2 years, he had built that. And I'm over here as a broker owner, for 4 years, and I built my business to 15 agents. And it really wasn't even, even though I had 15 agents, I wasn't profitable. I mean, all of my overhead and the systems, the tools, I had brick and mortar office, I had a few staff members that I paid salary to. I mean, my overhead was eating me alive. And really, the only reason I was able to survive was because I was still in production myself. And and so essentially, like, my sales production, I was doing about $300,000 a year in GCI. But at the end of the year, I was only making, probably less than 100 grand, like close to $80,000, because my income, my sales income, was supplementing the business to keep it alive, because the deals from my 15 agents just weren't cutting it. And so, I saw what he was doing. He'd already built this up in a couple of years, and and it was all profit. He didn't have any overhead. All the agents that he had, brought into the business were all, kind of paying their own way. I was like, oh my gosh, man, that's a pretty cool model. I think that that's something that I'd like to get to. I like the fact that I could also scale my business, to many other locations, different states and all that. Whereas, here I was just in San Antonio. And so, yeah, so that was kind of, the biggest thing for me was just the opportunity and truly getting the freedom side of it, because, like, I thought having my own brokerage was going to be building freedom. But if it was, it was completely the opposite. I mean, I was working 80, 90 hours a week, when I had my brokerage, and it just felt like beating my head against the wall. Like, every time I tried to make a move to improve the business, I'd either stay stagnant or it'd be, a detrimental move, and so that was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do at that point.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about your story. I love just how it happened with Pat. I mean, that's just so funny to me. And then secondly, it's just cool because you had an independent firm of 15 agents, you said, and you just saw how much more powerful the eXp model was. I mean, no overhead, the opportunity to expand in multiple states, around the world now, since we're opening additional countries every year.
Yep.
It's just when you look at the two different models, it's like to us, obviously, it's a no brainer. But who knows? I think we're just gonna keep seeing more and more independents joining, like we already are, but even at a higher level at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I always, talk to my organization and my group, and a lot of times, they're like, hey, who should we, like, start really trying to talk to about this model? And they start thinking, like, immediately, like, I need to talk to, like, new agents, because maybe they're the easiest to talk to, right? Like, they don't really know a lot about the business. And I kind of, like, tell them the opposite. I say, look, the thing with, like, new agents is, when you go after and you talk to new agents for agent attraction purposes, they don't know what they don't know. So it's almost like you talk to them and you tell them about all the benefits about eXp, and they, like, it goes over their head. Like, they don't understand what a benefit we really have at eXp. Whereas if you talk and you can truly talk, like, get, cut all the BS out. I'll try and be PC, cut all the BS out. And you can actually talk numbers. You can, get the honest truth from like an independent brokerage owner or a team leader or just an agent who's been in the business a long time, and they're not just, giving you fluff. If you can really talk to the numbers to it, it makes way more sense. And usually at that point, they're like, oh my gosh, it's an amazing opportunity. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that I've realized over the course of being here the last, 2.5 years is, sometimes, and then even if you get a new agent, that joins eXp, I've found that a lot of times they're the ones that are more prone to leaving because, again, the grass might be greener somewhere else, just because they're not experienced enough to know what truly we have here at eXp. I've seen every model. I've been, I've got numbers of KW, Remax, Century 21, Coldwell Banker agents in my group, and they tell me all the, things about their brokerage. I've scoped out every single model out there, and there's just nothing, that compares to eXp. But you just got to get to that, like, truthful level with someone that you're speaking with, and if they're knowledgeable, like, if they know the industry, I mean, it's at that point, it's almost game over. Like, they kind of see it.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. So that transitions us perfectly into really what people watching this are watching it for, which is the revenue share. So tell us, how many agents have you personally sponsored, and how big is your group?
Yeah, I've personally sponsored 40 agents, FLAs. I've got right now just at 24 FLQAs, and my total group size is at 246 right now.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. And how many states would you say that spans across?
30 states right now.
That's awesome. That is so cool. I was just having a conversation yesterday with an agent, and I was just talking about how it's obviously great to have multiple streams of income. And it's just so powerful right now with everything going on, the security that gives us, because some states have deemed real estate non-essential, and that means they really can't do much right now. But when you have agents in 30 states, meaning we're closing transactions in all these different states, our rev share teams are,
Mhm.
that is so powerful and exciting. So man, I'm just so
Well,
thankful for that.
yeah, I was just talking to a broker owner out in Cape Cod yesterday. I was on the phone with her for, man, an hour and 45 minutes. You want to talk about a conversation that you kind of cut through all the BS? Like, we were talking good stuff. We were on the phone for a long time, but it was a great call because it's kind of crazy. She's done very well. She's actually she was Mike Ferry coached. I know that you were Mike Ferry coached
Yeah.
back in the day. She knows all the big players. She knows Jay Kinder. She knows everybody. Brent Gove. She even knows. And so, she knows all these people. And so she's very well connected, but, she's out there in the Cape Cod market. And, she was like, Kyle, the thing I'm most afraid of about, all the stuff going on right now with the virus is the fact that, most of our people that come to this market, it's usually like, either second homes or whatever, but with like travel and even into the future, she feels like, the airline industry and people traveling on planes is going to decrease a lot, which is going to greatly impact her business. And I was just like, my gosh, like, I mean, that was like, she set me up kind of for that same conversation about like, well, that's all the more reason to be diversified because she's not planning to leave Cape Cod, like never, no way, she's not moving. But, how great would it be if she could start building a business that, doesn't have to be so, just predominant in Cape Cod, if she could diversify her business. And so that made a big impact on her. I don't think sometimes, and I mean, when you're not with eXp or if you're just starting out with eXp, it's kind of hard to think like, oh, my business will be in, all these different states. But I promise you, when I came to eXp, like I knew that Pat had done it. So luckily I had like seen where it could go. But I still didn't truly believe it in my heart that it was going to like happen for me, that I'd have agents all over the country. But it happens way quicker than you'd ever realize. I mean, if you just start working it, because opportunities exist everywhere. And we can kind of talk about some of the different sources and ways that I've been able to attract agents. But you'd be so surprised. I mean, when you're just focused on your local market, there's not a whole lot of opportunity, whereas like the entire US and then now Canada, Australia, UK, like there's way more opportunity when you open up that entire can of worms. And then you'd be surprised. I mean, it's no harder to attract somebody that's in Florida or New York or wherever than it would be here in your local market, but yet at the same point you are building something way better than if you're just focused on your local market.
Yep, exactly. And I love how you're treating it like a business. You just mentioned that you had a conversation that was almost 2 hours long.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of people watching this are probably thinking, well, gosh, that's a long time for a conversation with an agent who knows, maybe they'll never join eXp.
Yeah.
But I like to think of it like that's like a listing presentation.
Yep.
I assume you did it over Zoom because I know you like to do them over Zoom.
Yep.
I mean, imagine like if you go on a listing appointment, let's just say it's 20 minutes from your house. You have to prepare for the appointment. There's at least an hour. You have to drive there and back. There's another hour or so. You have to sit there with the prospect, tour the house. That's another probably 2 hours. I mean, that's a 4 hour process, I would say minimum for a listing presentation. And hopefully the home sells, but they always don't, of course. And even if it did sell, let's say based on the average sale price in the US, about 250, you're going to get a commission check of $7,500. And that's a one-time transaction.
Yep.
But with revenue share, that agent sounds like a top producing agent. She'd be a capping agent. So you're going to get up to $2,800 a year if she joins eXp, as long as she's with eXp the next 20 years, maybe
Yep.
10 years, whatever it is. That's an extra 25 to say $60,000, not to mention anybody that she might tell about eXp. I mean, that could legit turn into a six-figure income every single year from that one conversation. And it was from the comfort of your home.
Yep.
And before and after, you probably got to see your family. Like, how cool
Exactly.
is that? Like, you just walked out your office
Yep.
that you're in and your
Yep.
kids are probably screaming, running around.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, it goes back to, it's funny. I haven't had a whole lot of conversations with Rob Flick, but there's one that I've had with Rob Flick and it's just stuck in my mind for like the longest time. He basically asked me, he said, "Hey Kyle, how many homes do you normally sell each year?" And I told him, I said, roughly about 40, 45 homes per year. He said, "Perfect." He was like, the only difference between you and me is that, you've gone on, 40 or 50, listing presentations or buyer presentations, this year and got the deal, right? You locked it in. He was like, "I've been on 40 listing presentations," he uses air quotes, and with agents, and I've closed the deal. He was like, "In your listings, they might have paid you what? How much did you make from that?" I said, 250 to 300 grand is usually what I'll close in GCI per year. He's like, "Well, that's perfect." He's like, "Now I make, about 250 per month from my 40 closings versus yours that you made one time, and you got to go out and do it over and over again." And so like that so struck me, and so it's like one of those things where when I heard that, it shifted my mindset from thinking like, my sales was my primary focus and agent attraction came secondary. It flipped that, and I'm not saying because at the time, this was probably a good 2 years ago. I mean, my group might have only been 15 or 20 people at the time and total. And, but it was that mind shift change because he told me that. And what I basically made the commitment to doing at that point was I still had to pay my bills. So like, I was like, "Look, I'm going to sell just as many homes as I need to like continue to pay my bills. And I'm going to spend just the amount of time that I can to pay my bills through selling real estate. But then everything else, all the extra time that I've got, I'm going to try and, build revenue share, and I'm going to try and get better at building revenue share." Cause that's the thing is like, it's not so much just about the actions of going out there and prospecting and building your revenue share group by talking to agents, but there's a lot of things that I had to learn to get good and to get where I'm at today with prospecting for agents. There's questions that I had to learn. I watched presentation after presentation after presentation. I remember, Gene Frederick it was one of the first ones when I joined. Gene had a video up and it was like an hour long. You probably remember it, where he explains the eXp model. And man, I watched that video, I'd say probably close to 100 times, whether it was with another agent, like I was sitting there watching it with them, or I just had it playing back or whatever. I'd listen to it in my car just because I wanted to like hear how he says it so I could say it, my own way, but, using some of the ways he says it. And same thing with like Brent Go videos or Jay Kinder. Like I was always like a student of this, so that way I could get better myself. And I think that's really important. If you really want to go after this, if you can see what the power and potential of this is, everything else I feel like, aside from my family, would come secondary. You know what I mean? Like, my real estate sales, it's just purely a function of making money today, my covering my bottom line expenses, but then everything else I do, I want to build revenue share.
Yep. I love that. And guys, if you're watching live, we're going to get into the tactical stuff here in a second. So if you have questions, make sure you're putting them in the group. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But I want to just touch on real quick, like, why is building revenue share so important to you? Like, what's the thought behind it?
Yeah, man. I want to have that AJ Mida lifestyle. I need to come out there and live in Puerto Rico with you, man. No, I mean that would be nice, but no, I've always had a goal. So like, I've got two little kids. I've got a 3-year-old and well, he's just turned 4 actually when we were in Puerto Rico this last trip here in March, but 4-year-old and then a soon to be 6-year-old. And and then my wife, and we love to travel. I mean, that's one of our biggest things. We traveled last year, I think went to 5 different places, and they were all like at least 7 to 10 day trips. And we love to travel, and we'd love to continue to travel and do it even more. We homeschool them, so a lot of what we do, it's teaching them while we're on the road. And and so everything that I'm doing today is to build this freedom lifestyle that in 3 to 5 years, we can live off of the investments that we've made. We could live off of the revenue share that we're earning. And essentially, I still will want to work. I mean, there's a lot of goals that I have. Plus I'm not the kind of person to like, stay inactive or like do nothing. But at the same point, like, I don't want to have to go and sell a listing or sell a buyer, if I don't want to, right? I just want to do whatever I want to do. I want that freedom. And I know that, with the power of revenue share and where we're at as a company, we're still in my opinion, in the early stages. I mean, I know we're at 28,000 agents, but I do see us being way, way bigger here in the next few years. And if I just go hard at this for the next, year to 2 years, there won't be anything that can stop me, after that point. And so that's what kind of drives me. That's what motivates me. And then just knowing that, once I've done that and I've put all that work in, that my family and we have every option available to us. We can go live wherever we want. We can travel wherever we want. We buy whatever we want, like all that kind of stuff within reason. You know me, AJ. I'm not like I'm not going to go out and buy a Lear jet or anything like that. Like I still live, beneath my means for the most part, and but at the same point, I still want all the options, and I want to be able to do that comfortably without ever having to worry. And I just know that this is the best opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate freedom, right? You get to spend as much time with the ones you love doing what you love. Like that's the dream.
Exactly.
And for the
Yep.
first time ever, as real estate agents, we have that opportunity.
Yep.
It's just so cool. I
Yep.
mean, you talked a lot about what you want to do for you in the future. And I know you got massive goals, and that's, one of the reasons why we became such great friends. But, you're a super humble guy. Without being super humble, like what has it done already for you and your family though? I mean, you've been with the company, right around 3 years, not even 3 years yet. You got this group that's growing. More agents are adding to it every single month. And I know you love to travel.
Mhm.
Great travel vlog. If you want to drop the name of that channel, so
Yep.
people can check it out. But
Yep.
how has it changed your life already?
Yeah. So, yeah, basically at this point, with my 250 agents, I've been averaging roughly about $10,000 a month in revenue share, which, that's given me the breathing room to, at this point, not do whatever I want, but it certainly makes it easier to justify like a week long or 2 week long trip. Because my income's not solely dependent on what I sell in real estate. I still do sell real estate because, 10 grand a month, that's kind of like just covering my stuff, but at the same point I also want to save money and do things like that. And so but the revenue share, what it's already done for me is it's just given me that kind of that peace of mind, right? It's given me peace of mind. It's given me also, like, I think this is also something that doesn't get said a whole lot, and I think it's important. It's given me a big sense of purpose. When I used to have my own brokerage, and I felt like a sense of purpose there, but not to the scale that I have now. I actually have people that, like, really do look up to me, and they need my help, and they're asking things, and they really respect me, and that just feels good, for somebody who, I am super passionate about this. I love this. I love this business. To be able to give my all, but then also know that it's making a big impact on a lot of people, not just a few people here near me. It's pretty cool. And so I mean, I definitely live with a bigger sense of purpose now, which is awesome. And then, yeah, like they say, the financial thing has been amazing. The other part too, and I'll just point this out, but not just on the rev share piece, but the stock. I mean, that, I've been an Icon agent now. I just hit it for the third time. I've accumulated, quite the shares of stock. I'm at about 11,000 shares now. And, and that to me is pretty awesome too, because my big goal is I want to get to 20,000 shares of stock, because I want to see eventually, this is no stock prediction or anything. This is just like what I want to see. Who knows if it'll come true or not, but I want to see the stock hit $50 a share at some point. So if I have 20,000 shares, that's $1 million. Like, that's like my big goal. So we'll see if that truly comes into effect or not. But, that's kind of been my thing from the beginning. And that's just been an amazing thing, just because that's just coming as I sell real estate, I don't have to really do a whole lot different for that.
I love that, dude. And I mean, you've spent the last couple of years building this six-figure passive income stream. And at the same time, I mean, you're still, you mentioned that your goal is to spend as little as time as possible selling real estate at this point, because you see the bigger opportunity of truly building a company. That's why Gary Keller Williams built Keller Williams. That's why Dave Liniger built Remax, because the big payoff, the wealth builder, is building a company. But I mean, you're still selling how many houses a year?
About 40 to 45.
Yeah. So you have a second stream of income that's over six figures, and your main business selling houses, which is also over six figures. Like, that's my mission. You're talking about, having a purpose. Like, I feel the same way. It's like, how many agents can we help make six figures selling houses if they're not already making six figures selling houses, and then also help them make a six-figure passive income stream through revenue share. Like that to me is a sweet spot.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's the cool thing too. When you asked about, the revenue share group, is it's not also what it's doing to, for me and my family. It's what it's also doing to the people that are in my group. The fact that we can all work together as a team and it's benefiting every single one of us. Like, one of my good friends, and I'm sure a lot of people know of him, his name's Curtis Dixon. We came into this to eXp together essentially. And, I was at the time the broker owner. He was one of my agents at Handy Realty. But then when we came to eXp, I sponsored him here, but helped him, and he's at this point, I think he's right at about 100 agents in his revenue share group. So he makes up about 100 agents out of my 250. And, and what it's done in his life, that he now has passive income stream coming in that benefits him, but it also benefits myself. But then I've also got, a number of other agents, Mark Lemons, Danny Correa, like all these different agents that are in my group, and they text me and they're like, "Hey, Kyle, I just had my biggest revenue share check I've ever had, it's $2,400, and they're like, so excited. And it's like, oh my gosh, we all win together. It's not just like I'm winning, we're all winning. So I think that's the other cool, piece about it.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the coolest parts about the company. It's, the income's great, but the fun we're having and seeing people win. I mean, I just love going to the events and, the people that you mentioned, love seeing those guys and,
Yeah.
we just have a great time together. It's just good people, amazing culture, more than I ever could expected with the company. It's the most fun I've ever had in like my professional life. So
Yep.
it's really cool.
Agreed.
Um, all right, so let's jump into the tactical. So, what was your mindset towards agent attraction when you first joined?
Um, well, basically when I first joined, my mindset was, how do I get into more dialogue with as many agents as possible? Because I didn't have a big network, even though I was, I came from owning a brokerage here. I would never been focused on recruiting for my independent. It was mainly just people that, were connected to me. They were friends of mine or friends of a friend. And then they ended up talking to me. Never had like, put a lot of stuff out there on LinkedIn or, connected just with the realtor community. That just kind of wasn't me. I was always kind of in my own space, just kind of focused on what I could control in my little business at the time. And so when I, saw what I needed to do with eXp, my first thing was like, well, how can I get in front of more agents, right? Like, like what's the easiest way to scale this? Because we all have the same amount of time each day. And so, I started looking into tools. I started looking into like, at the time we could still do like advertisements. So I started like playing around with that kind of stuff for agent attraction. Now, obviously, we can't run ads, but at the same point, I was just like finding any way that I could get in front of agents and really agents that wouldn't have known me otherwise, like agents that were probably in like different states and stuff, so like we naturally wouldn't have been in contact. I really wanted to focus on that. And so that was my big mindset. And then of course, the ones that I already had connections with, like maybe we had done past transactions and stuff, I definitely started and reached out to all of those too. But at the same point, like I knew that I had to do more than just that. So my focus was, how do I get in front of a lot of people?
Awesome. And at the core, it's just like having conversations. It's the same thing with selling real estate. How do you have more conversations with people who might be looking to buy or sell? So your mindset was, how do I have more conversations with real estate agents?
Correct.
That's one of the cool things about eXp. We all heard, or I'm sure have been through a McDonald's drive-through, and we understand the concept of, would you like fries with that?
Mhm.
It's an upsell. It's a way to increase the profit from the same transaction. So I kind of look at eXp like that. When done the right way, you have a great transaction with an agent, or however you might come into a relationship with them in your local market or nationwide. But let's just say it's a specific transaction. You get your commission check. When it closes, you can also say to the agent, hey, it was awesome working with you on this transaction. I'd love to grab a cup of coffee with you, or however you make that transition. But ultimately, what you're saying is, just out of curiosity, have you looked into eXp yet? So now you just didn't make profit from that transaction. You can also earn revenue share from doing that same real estate transaction, which is pretty cool and pretty unique. Um, So, so now, you talked a little bit about what you were doing and what your mindset was when you first got started. What are you doing differently compared to what you started off with? Like, how has it
Yeah.
changed?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is important as far as like a tactical kind of thing perspective on it. But like, I basically now for agent attraction, I focus on two things. I focus on a long-term strategy, which is, if anybody's familiar, I put out a lot of content. I've, got a YouTube channel. I've got my blog, and I'm focused around, providing as much, valuable real estate content as I can, to the real estate community as a whole, which allows me to get discovered by agents that wouldn't have known me otherwise. But that's kind of the long-term strategy, because it takes a while to build up anything meaningful where you're going to get like SEO value on your blog, or where you're actually going to start getting a lot of subscribers or views on your YouTube channel. Like, I mean, literally, I've been doing this for probably about a year to a year and a half now, and it's just now starting to like get some stuff trickling in. And when I say stuff, I mean like conversations with agents started because of this. And so like that for me, so that's one side of it. Like I definitely do spend a decent amount of time building that as kind of my long-term strategy, because I know that at some point I'm not going to want to actively even recruit agents anymore, level ones. And I need some kind of an engine that will almost get me some level ones without, me having to, continually work it. Like I told you, my goal 3 years, like if I want to be out, I can be out, right? Like with minimal work. And the way that the revenue share is set up, like you're going to need some way to have, continually, putting in new level one agents to keep all of your levels unlocked. Like I just know that. So that was something that I've been implementing now for about a year. The other reason why I did that was because, we can't run Facebook ads or any kind of advertisements. So I thought, well, if I can't do it, through advertisements, and I have to do it organically, right? Like the company can't stop me from making content that's going to get me discovered by agents organically, So I've just now focused on doing that. And that's kind of led me down that path. So that's one aspect. Now, the other aspect that I do is what can I do that's going to produce results today? And for that, that's like the prospecting side, So I do things a lot on social media, reaching out to agents on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been a big one as of late, getting a lot of great conversations going that way. And so it's just having different systems and being consistent with prospecting. Like if you can prospect even just an hour a day, like I mean that sounds so super easy, but trust me, it's not easy to be consistent and prospect an hour every single day for agent attraction. But if you will just commit to prospecting, like forcing it every single day, you will, your revenue share group will blow up, especially, I mean, your level ones. And there's different ways of doing it, like different scripts and things like that. But, and I wouldn't get too bogged down with that. The hardest thing is just taking the action and then being consistent and staying consistent through, a long period of time. All the actual like scripts and what do you say, all that stuff you'll get better at if you're just being consistent and doing it. You'll find better scripts. You'll get better at saying things. You'll get better at doing demos or whatever you're going to, process you're going to put them through. Your process will get better if you just do it over and over and over. But I know so many agents, they don't even want to start till they feel like they've got it all figured out. And trust me, you'll never have it all figured out. I mean, I'm here 2.5, 3 years later. I still don't have it figured out. I blunder through things. I say things the wrong way. I blow deals, that I probably could have had with agents if I, said it a different way, or if I just, did a different process with them. So like that, you can't think about. You just have to kind of like go and do it.
That is so true. It's about taking action, and when you take action, your path kind of reveals itself. You can't even know what you need without taking action, because different things reveal themselves. You get different objections. You start to see and learn that, hey, that worked good what I said, and oh, that didn't land that great, or they probably don't even understand what I'm talking about. I'm making it too complicated.
Yep.
And you never know those things until you start taking action with it. So I love that advice.
Yeah.
So say you're, a brand new agent at eXp, or someone looking to join the company, and you're excited about revenue share. Like, what is the first thing that they should do? The first thing they should focus on?
Yeah, I think, having a good like digital footprint is especially important because in this day and age, it's almost like having, reviews for your buyer and seller business. Like you got to have good reviews, of whether it be on Yelp or Facebook or Zillow, wherever it is, right? You want to have good reviews because nowadays, people are going to look you up, right? Like they're going to see what social proof you have. And for agent attraction, it's kind of the same thing, right? Your social proof has to be your professionalism online. Like if I've got somebody reaching out to me that's trying to pitch me anything, the first thing I do is I look this person up and I look at the person. I say, is this guy like, you know, like worth the time that I'm going to invest talking to him, right? Like, and if he's got it all put together, his website's, on point, his social media game is great, then I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll give the guy a shot. Like I'll talk to him, right? But if he's got like, stuff on there, it's not updated, it looks terrible, it's not cohesive. I'm like, why would I talk to him when I feel like I already know more than that person? So I
Right.
think, you gotta start there. You gotta get your digital presence looking good, and how do you do that? You look up other agents, look up influencers, and you're in, AJ's group. There's a lot of people that are high influencers in that group. Like look up people, and not everybody that's an influencer has a great digital presence. There's people that have different, strategies. But for me, at least the strategy I think is, you got to have a good digital presence and look up the ones that do have that and just try and, mirror it, right? Like, do something very similar. Make sure your bios are on point, make sure your headshots are on point, make sure you've got, relevant content, like good content on your, your different profiles. So when somebody does look you up, you don't have to have years and years worth of content, but if somebody looks you up, make sure you got, a good solid couple pieces of helpful content that shows you're a, person worth speaking with if they were to invest their time with you. So I think that's where it starts. And then of course, investing in yourself as far as getting educated as to how better you can build revenue share, like what scripts you can use. And obviously like calls like this that you're watching right now are good ways to do that. And there is tons of this type of content that if you truly are passionate about building this, you can find it. You will get it. There's, YouTube stuff, there's Facebook stuff, people you can plug into personally. And, a lot of times, there's so much stuff out there too that's not like easily accessible, but if you're like pursuing it, you can come across it. And those are the types of things that separates the people that, do well and the ones that don't. Like if you are just thinking it's going to be easy and things are going to slide across your plate and then you can, and then you're just going to get better and better, it's not how it happens. Like I've had to, force everything. I have to go out there and figure it out myself. I have to go find the answer to something. And that's, I think, something that, has really been different for me than, maybe a lot of other people, is that, I know if some people don't know the answer, they just don't, do it or whatever. For me, like, I don't ever have a question that I don't know the answer to because I will go figure it out. Like I go find that answer, whether it's through, research, whether it's through talking to somebody. But if I've got a question, like I'm not good enough not to just like let it go. I go find out everything I can about it.
I love that. So step one, get your digital imprint or footprint
Yeah.
on point. Love that. That's huge. Step two, learn as much as possible. I mean, guys, I haven't talked to a top revenue share earner in the company who hasn't spent hundreds of hours watching different presentations, giving the presentation themselves at local lunch and learns. Like, I mean, when you're working out, when you're walking around, like you're listening to these presentations, you're listening to other interviews like this, and you just absorb all of that, and it helps your skill set when it comes to attraction.
Yeah. I would
So
even go as far as to say, volunteer. Like even if you're not super comfortable with it. I remember honestly, that was probably one of the things that kind of propelled me onto this trajectory the most was I remember, I think it was like April, we were doing a deal out in Arizona. Scott Lewis, Rob Flick, they were hosting like an influencers thing. And I'm flying out there and Scott's like, hey, would you be willing to jump up on stage and do a presentation? And I'm like, dude, I've got like 45 agents in my group. Like, who am I to go up in a room full of 200 agents and tell them how to, attract agents, right, to the company? But, but I said yes, and even though I was super uncomfortable, it was probably the first time I'd ever gotten up on a stage in front of that many people, maybe even ever, in front of anybody. But, after that point, there was literally like a switch that flipped and everything changed. I basically then at that point could, do presentations. I felt more comfortable. I felt like it also forced me to learn, because I then, the next day or two, instead of like just, bumming around Arizona and the resort we were staying at, like I'm in my room, like, typing up my presentation, trying to, learn what I could say that would be worthwhile for people. And I think if you put yourself in that scenario, it'll force you to learn, it'll force you to kind of get better, and you'll learn, and over time, that might not be your best presentation, but it'll kick you off to where, you'll have better presentations after and after and after. And so I would definitely say, step out of your comfort zone, go out there, do a presentation, like try and find, a way that you can maybe, like I have agents a lot of times that will jump on my eXp webinar that I do. I do it every Tuesday. You can jump on it if you want. It's tuesdayexecutiveoverview.com. And it's Tuesday at 5 o'clock Central Time. You can check it out. I have agents that are new agents in my group that I'm like, hey, I don't need you to do the whole presentation, but do this part, right? Because I just want them to take a little bit of action on the revenue share side. I want them to, feel like, they can do it. And so, and then, they either start doing more of it or they do their own presentations themselves. Like it's that kind of thing that starts it. But at the same point, and kind of going along with what I said earlier, you definitely need to be learning and growing, but don't wait to get started until you know it all. So like, I don't want to say like it's constantly learning. You definitely need to learn, but I don't want somebody to misconstrue that and think like, I got to learn a lot before I start this. Learn constantly all the time, but get started right away.
Yep. Learn, take action, and
That's
keep
it.
repeating that. I
That's
love it.
it.
Love it. Cool. Well, we're going to be wrapping up here shortly. Got a couple questions in the group. So Robin Mann asked, how do you present value to agents from other states?
Yeah. Great question. So I think that, for one, it depends on, like where that person's, like what they're looking for. Like if they are like a producing agent, they want to sell more real estate. Like I got to find out like where that person's starting from. Like, what is it that they need? And once I know what they need, then I tailor my presentation around trying to meet that need and filling that need. And so if they're worried that, just because I'm in a different state, I let them know. I say, hey, I think that's almost an advantage. The fact that I can bring in a different perspective, things that you might not necessarily see if it's in your own market. I can, shed light on things, that you might have a question about, and I'll give you a completely different perspective than what you might get if it was just somebody in your market that so that's one way I use it as an advantage. And then for, an agent attraction purposes, I tell people, I say, look, the fact that I'm not in your market is kind of good. You don't have to worry about me trying to, go recruit agents or something like that, or competitors or anything like that. Like literally you do your own thing. I'm here to guide you and help you every way possible. And the beautiful thing about that is that's what this model is. Like, if you yourself, and this is me talking to the agent that is curious of how I can help them in a different state, I say, look, do you just want to build a business that's based locally, or do you want to build something bigger than that? Do you want to go attract agents in other states? Well, if you just, think that, that the only people that can help you are the people in your states, you'll never grow bigger than that, right? I can show you a way that you can attract agents all over this world that's going to truly impact your life. And so that's kind of where I go with that question.
Love it. Awesome. And a follow-up to that question, once that person agrees to sign up with eXp, is there a way to connect them locally once they sign up with you?
Yeah, 100%. So I always will get them plugged in, to somebody. If I know somebody that's in that, market personally, I always connect them, if it's somebody that's in my RevShare group, or maybe it's just another influencer that's not in my group, I say, hey, this is the best person I know that's, somewhat close to you. I'm going to put a three-way, Facebook Messenger call, or Facebook Messenger, or a three-way text message between us, just to kind of kick things off and get you a little bit plugged in. But then, of course, there's always kind of like a little orientation process I do with them. I walk them through the world. I make sure they're comfortable, going into their, broker state room. They meet their broker. A lot of times I'll set up a three-way call with their broker. And then if they're brand new, then of course, we got to make sure they get a mentor that's in their area. But yeah, there's all sorts of different ways, make sure they join their Facebook state group on Workplace, and just getting them plugged in as much as possible that way. That's kind of the thing. And I will say, I mean, that's the biggest challenge that you've got with, building this thing to different markets, because if you get somebody and they're not in your area, it does present a challenge. You got to work extra hard to make sure they stay plugged in. And if you end up finding a leader, you strike gold with like a leader that's in a different area. I mean, that's a home run. So I mean, you gotta do it because it presents such a great opportunity, but you also have to invest a lot of your time to make sure that they don't just feel, out there on their own island. And so it does take work, but it's worth it, especially if you find the right person.
Yep. Amen to that, man. It's worth it. I
Hmm.
love it. So time for two more quick questions. Erica just asked a good script. Erica, we have some of those in the files section inside of the Go Getters private Facebook group that we have. So check those out. And Kyle and I also worked on some awesome scripts for social media that I'll pop in that group later today as well. So props to Kyle for coming up with those. And then Dave Bell asks, this is the last question, tips for newer agents that don't have a lot of transactions or know a lot of agents.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing with new agents, as far as what you want to do, if we're talking about revenue share and how you can build that, having transactions definitely helps. I mean, if you're brand new and you have no transactions done, I do kind of tell most of the agents that are brand new, like, hey, in the beginning, you probably got to focus a lot more on sales than you do on agent attraction. I know this is a great opportunity, but at the same point, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 9 months that you've really got to go hard on the sales side and focus on that. But, if you don't have a lot of sales, the hard thing is that, one, you got to, how are you going to be taken seriously? If somebody starts asking you like what your backstory is. The thing is, though, that combats all of that is truly just how you present yourself and your confidence. So I think that, even if you're new, it is harder, right? If you don't have any sales and to be taken seriously, but if you can speak, knowledgeably, I think that for one will at least kick things off. And then number two, what I would say to that is as quickly as possible, you should probably try to get that person plugged in with your sponsor or somebody in your upline that, can take them the rest of the way. And so I tell a lot of my agents from day one, hey, share your excitement with people, share, your energy and that type of stuff. Like, you don't necessarily need to share all the facts, and you don't need to get into the nitty gritty about like what it has done for your business. Cause if you don't have a lot of proof yet, then that might hurt things. So really, you just need to kind of sound excited. And then the approach that I'd always taken, like, let's just say I kind of relate this to when I was brand new into new home sales. And I was 21, 22 at the time. And I'm like, who's going to buy a $300,000 home for me? I'm this like kid straight out of college, and I've got, 55, 60, 65-year olds coming into my office daily. And I'm like, they're not going to take me seriously. And I almost, what I did to kind of use that to my advantage was, I made the person feel like, you know, feel like they were, so I don't know how to put it, but they were like, they were on high. Like I would, compliment them very well. I would, be like, just saying like, hey, that's a great question. I think, I've never been asked that before,
Yeah.
but I'll find the answer out for you. But I made them feel good. And I almost made them feel like they were helping me out, like they were teaching me something, right? Like, even though that sounds maybe counterintuitive, the fact that you do that, it at least builds trust, and it like keeps that conversation going. And then when you can finally have built up enough rapport with them, even if it's in the sense that like they feel superior to where you're at, if you can at least build that relationship to say, hey, you know what, you're so smart. Like, I definitely need you to speak to, my partner here. He's, reminds me a lot of you or whatever. I think you guys would connect really well. Just, give us 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'd love for him to share what he's done and what this can do, because I think that y'all will really relate a lot. I think that's almost the approach you have to take in the very beginning when you don't have a lot of sales or proof yet. So I don't know. Is that a good answer,
Dude,
AJ?
that's awesome, man. I love it. I love it. So good. This has been valuable advice, actionable advice, and I know everyone listening will learn a lot from it. And if they're not with eXp already, I think they got a good insight of what it takes to be successful with revenue share. And if you're watching this and you're friends with Kyle, definitely reach out to him and learn more about eXp and all that good stuff. And if you're not subscribed to Kyle's channel yet on YouTube, Kyle Handy, putting out tons of great content. So definitely check that out. And your blog's kylehandy.com, right?
That's correct.
Cool. So check that out too. He's doing some really neat stuff on there with like income reports and things like that. So I myself am always checking that out. So, well, cool, man. We'll chat later. Thanks for coming on. I always appreciate the time that we spend together. So good stuff, man. Love it. Keep crushing it.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on, AJ. Appreciate it. You have a good one.
Yep. You too.